Welcome back. It's 6:45. Here's a sector that is suffering directly and immediately from these extended power outages: domestic workers. Now, due to these power cuts, employers are cutting back on hours. And of course, this is a result of the cost of living, which is increasing. The minimum wage, to remind you, minimum wage is 23 Rand and 19 cents an hour, or it's about 3,700 Rand a month. Now, bear in mind that's working 160 hours or 8 hours a day, 20 days a month. Now, last year, Stats SA reported in the last quarter that 32,000 people had lost their jobs. So just how bad is it, and what is the call from organizations? Well, Maggie Mthombeni, there she is, case manager for Izwi Domestic Workers Alliance, joining us this morning. Hello, Maggie, and just give us a sense then just how devastating this is, knowing how little domestic workers are earning, and then suddenly they just lose their jobs. Tell me how bad it is.
Good morning. Thank you so much for joining. And as you already introduced me, my name is Maggie Mthombeni. Yes, it was affecting domestic workers a lot just because of Corona, and then now just because of this load shedding. I think it's bad to waste, and then it's not fair because it's not domestic workers. It's not domestic workers as a reason why the electricity is always on and off. Because most of domestic workers, they're just losing their job just because employers now they can afford to do their house chores, like just because electricity sometimes is coming midnight. They wake up and do the washing, the ironing, as during the day the washing machine can't be turned on because it's always off just because of electricity. And then some of them, they're just working more than minimum hours because they just want to cover everything as ironing, washing, just because, as I said, that the washing machine during the load shedding is not working. So it's a very big challenge on domestic workers because some of them, they're losing their job just because their employers can afford to do their house chores. And then they are following the right procedure on retrenching them, but the reason for retrenchment is not fair just because of electricity.
So is that the main reason, one of the main reasons, Maggie, that domestic workers are losing their jobs from their employers, because the power is going off? What does an employer do in a situation like that? What are you asking from employers?
We are just asking from employers that it's not because of domestic workers for the electricity. The electricity thing is it's a big challenge for everyone in the country. So I think if they can just try to comply and try to understand why the electricity is like this, because it's not only for domestic workers. And then I don't think it's only domestic workers who are going to be affected, because I just noticed that there's some other shops that they don't need their helpers because of this load shedding. So with the only thing which are asking from the employers is just to bear with domestic workers and respect them also as workers, not just to take them as helpers. Yes, they are helpers, but they are workers as well. They are domestic workers. They have a contract. You can't just terminate somebody's contract just because of the electricity.
Do you think employers need to maybe change the way that they think? Because ordinarily an employer and a domestic worker would have had a set number of hours and a starting time for work. But if we know that there's going to be load shedding in the morning, as you say, when, for example, the washing machine isn't on because there's no power, or the iron, or whatever it is, to maybe let them start later in the day. Is that what you're asking employers? Is just not to fire people, not to let them go, don't retrench them, just change the way that the hours are being handled. Would that be fair?
100% fair, or unless if you can't afford the full time, because most of those domestic workers who are losing job are full time because the employer find it out that they are not doing anything during the day while the electricity is off. So I think if you can just retrench some other days, example, if somebody is working for you for 5 days and then you just notice that just because of electricity, the person is not doing anything during the day, can you just cut off some other days and retrench for full time and try to have a part-time, at least 3 days per day, because those ladies are breadwinners at home. And then most of the domestic workers are single mothers. So their kids are depending on them. Their families are depending on him. Half bread is better than nothing, unless if you can just retrench him for full time and give a part-time. Because most of the employers, they are now choosing to use Sweep South, as they know that they rent a maid for certain hours, because if the electricity come at 4, they can just prefer to have that ships out lady for only 2 hours. They know that she's going to do the ironing, and then the house chores, they can now afford to do the cleaning and the everything at home. But I think it's very good if you can just try to retrench for full time and try to have them for part time. For those who want to retain them, but for those who need their helpers for full time, please continue keep them. I think this thing is going to pass.
I certainly think it is going to pass one day, and unfortunately we're seeing a lot of damage, and I think you've highlighted very clearly the damage being caused to domestic workers, and it's a wonderful call. Maggie, thank you for your time. Maggie Mthombeni from Izwi Domestic Workers Alliance saying that, yes, she understands, of course, that there are days where domestic workers might be not doing a lot of work because the power isn't on, of course, and you don't have washing machines and regular appliances operating. All she's asking for is if you are in a situation where there's a full-time domestic worker, maybe just to re-look at the hours, not to retrench them completely, maybe just to cut back on the hours that your domestic worker is with you if you do still have one. My thanks to Maggie this morning.